Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Gehenna Gaming interview. I am Ravnos, and you obviously know Duff Malkavian and Marchosius, but we are very, very happy to have Quinton, otherwise known as Alistair, from NearDark Studios, with us this evening. How are you?
Doing fantastic. How are you guys?
Pretty
Good to
good.
hear.
Pretty good.
Doing great. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on the show. So this is my first interview, so you guys have to take it easy on me.
Wait, this is your very first?
Yeah, this is my first interview ever being interviewed, besides for like a job. But other than that, yeah, this is my first interview.
Well, you guys heard it. All those in the chat, make sure you ask really hard questions.
Yeah, really difficult questions.
Yeah.
Ask me the meaning of life.
If anyone knew Quinton when he was younger.
Also,
That's
we'll
dangerous.
call you.
That one's dangerous. We'll call you. All right. So, those of you who don't know, Quinton is the GM for NearDark Studios' Dungeons and Dragons 5e homebrew chronicle Death Attack, and he also plays the Ventrue Alistair on their V5 chronicle Chicago by Night, which air on Sunday and Monday nights respectively. Although I believe Death Attack is on a little break between seasons right now. Correct?
Correct. Yes. Right now we've been doing some one shots. We didn't do one this last Sunday because we were in Chicago taking photos for Chicago by Night. But
Nice.
yes, we are on a hiatus before season 2 starts.
Fantastic. You're also a prolific streamer in your own right, and people can catch you doing your campaign planning for Death Attack or playing a variety of games like Dead by Daylight, Destiny 2, and Magic the Gathering on your Tuesdays and Wednesday night streams. Just quickly, you can find Quinton on Twitter at the Feral Gent and Instagram as QQ the Barbarian. So thank you for tuning in this evening, and we'll get started. So, Quinton, the most obvious question to ask is kind of how did you get into tabletop gaming in the first place?
All right. How did I get into tabletop gaming? Well, it actually, when I really got into it, so I have a brother who's 12 years older than I am. So that kind of opened it up early for me, but he was much more of a magic card, player. He didn't really do the Dungeons and Dragons thing. It wasn't until later in my life I actually lost my job that I had, and the downtime of it, I actually picked up Pathfinder because my younger brother was like, hey, since you got a lot of free time, since you don't have a job anymore, maybe we should try this. And we ended up trying it out. And the first time I was able to imagine the scenario of combat in my own head, my own imagination, I was hooked. I was hooked. So probably like 20. So since I've been about 20.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Nice. How younger was your brother?
He was he's 7 years younger than I am.
Okay.
So he was a lot younger than myself, but he had already been playing Pathfinder and D&D on things like Roll20 and
Nice.
online RP chat rooms. He had never played it in person, and he ended up starting off as the dungeon master or the GM, ST. I'm just gonna say DM throughout the interview because that's just how I say it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
But he quickly realized that he did not like doing that, and I kind of got the role thrown onto me, and I tried it, and I loved it. So I've been ever since then. I've been sort of one of those eternal DMs.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
pretty
So
cool.
So
It's pretty
you've run the
badass that your
game-
younger brother introduced you to it. That's great.
Yeah, and you've run the game more than you've played it at this point, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I would say 1 out of 99. Yeah.
I don't know that feeling at all in any way, shape, or form. When I've been STing Vampire the Masquerade since 1999, and I didn't play it until 2017.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. I had played Werewolf. I played Werewolf in 1999, but I had never played it ever until a couple years ago.
So it's gotta feel like when you do get back into playing, or when you do have the opportunity to play instead of GM or ST or whatever, it's gotta feel like you're wearing like two left shoes, or like you're wearing your pants backwards. Does it feel funny?
You think At first I thought it was going to, but I think when you are in those shoes, it's kind of like playing, poker for a really long time or watching professional wrestling. You start to see the tells,
Yep.
from other DMs or STs and how they run their game. You can start to pick up like, oh, I kind of see what they're doing here, and then you can either kind of feed off of them, or they completely play nothing like you and you just get confused because you're like, I have no idea what's happening. But no, it gets me more into being able to play the character, because
Good.
I know as being a DM, I want to get a type of response from a player, so I want to give that response.
Yeah, and you can kind of sit in the skin of that character for longer instead of kind of diving in for short periods of time.
Right, and being an NPC and having to switch through a bunch of different personalities and character types, you can finally, put on the air of that character and walk around it a little longer and have
you're
more
holding
fun.
it on a one.
Yeah. Slow burn.
Sometimes, yeah.
So that begs the question: if you started, that's how you got your kind of roots. When did you get introduced to Vampire the Masquerade in the World of Darkness?
Okay, this one, this is gonna be an interesting story. So it's gonna be kind of
that's what we're here for.
Kind of a two-parter here. My first introduction to Vampire the Masquerade was actually by a coworker, many years ago, and he this coworker, I'm not saying names, believed that vampires were real. So when he talked about when he talked about Vampire the Masquerade, I sort of was like, oh, okay. So that's what this is.
Can you introduce him to us after stream?
After stream, more details.
Yeah. And that was my first encounter with it, but actually years after that experience, I met my wife now, Christy, who is also her birthday today. So happy birthday, Christy.
Happy birthday, Christy.
Happy birthday.
And she is the one that introduced me to Vampire, to actually dive deep into the lore and into everything about the game. And ever since then, I've been hooked.
Well, I got to say, first of all, it's a beautiful thing when a significant other shares that passion for Vampire the Masquerade and gaming in general.
Right.
But I kind of want to go back to your vampire friend for a second.
Okay, go ahead. Sure.
Did he play the game and believe in it, or was he like, I'm a vampire?
No.
And then just like the aesthetic of Vampire the Masquerade.
So he believed that vampires were real, and he believed that vampires existed in a very similar way to VTM, where they were sort of a secret society. He himself did not think he was a vampire. But yes, but he wanted to be one. So it was essentially a almost a self-searching ghoul, I guess, if you would try to label it how he viewed himself. But it was almost like, think of a LARPer that never stopped LARPing.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was.
That's insane. But I hope he found them.
Well, if he did, I don't think we'll ever see him again.
We mysteriously lost contact.
Yeah, I don't know where he is. He's been gone for a long time. Last time I saw him, it looked like he didn't age a day.
The truth is out there, guys.
So Keanu Reeves, what you're saying? That was
yes, Keanu Reeves.
That's great.
Such a gentleman.
So okay, so let's talk about the first game that you played with your wife then.
So for Vampire?
Yes.
Or in general, I guess.
Well, the first game that I think I played was Pathfinder, and that would have been before we were even dating, and I went over to do a one-shot for them, her and her friends, and she was currently with it was in her previous relationship, and the one-shot went very poorly because there were certain players that were let's just say they were power gamers, so
Yeah.
There was some power gaming. So the first experience wasn't good, but after that we ended up playing with those players out of it, and it ended up becoming something very interesting for her and got her more into the game because she was actually able to like role play and actually experience the characters how I like to run my games, where it's very story driven, it's very character heavy, and there isn't a lot of munchkin play where, the kick in the door, kill the monster, grab the loot.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
I try to keep that absent from my games.
That's great to hear. That's personally, I'm not really a big fan of games that feel like a video game.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
So most people would know you for your Chicago by Night stream currently.
Mhm.
Tell us more about Alistair.
Whew, Alistair. He's a pickle.
Yeah.
I guess I would like to start off with Alistair as I wanted to make a character that was both a stereotype of the Ventrue clan and also against the stereotype. So I wanted to challenge myself because you can make a character that's just, go way into the stereotype and you can go way against it. But to try to find a character that kind of rides the line between both of them, I feel like that's where I wanted to take the direction for him. And I don't want to spoil too many things about him because there's a lot of stuff that isn't been, announced in game. But I do know by now, anyone that's been watching knows that Alistair is old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alistair's old, and I knew that I wanted to also play an older kindred because I wanted to challenge myself doing that as well. And it has been a lot of fun to take myself out and put myself in the shoes of someone that wasn't even born in, a few centuries near my birth. Yeah, it's completely different experience.
Well, I mean, you do a good job with it, especially the voice that you put on, even your mannerisms. Like this gentleman clearly demands the respect that an old Ventrue would. How deep into the clan book did you go, or how deep into some of the older lore and some of the older material did you go to prepare for Alistair?
So to prepare for him, I think when I first started getting into Vampire, I have to give a huge shout out to Matthew Dawkins because his guide to Vampire was my first, I binge watched every single episode and just burnt that stuff into my brain. It's very entertaining and also just impressive that he did all that in one shot because you're watching
off
it
the
and
top
you
of his
see
head,
off the top of his head.
Yeah.
So
especially all those clan intros and the clan descriptions, the so you want to plays, and especially his Ventrue. I think was probably my favorite that he's depicted.
But that was my start. And then I did start reading a few novels, but because I was playing a kindred that was very old, I read a lot of things on Dark Age. And I read a lot of things like there's a Copenhagen by Night that I also read. In fact, a few things that are linked into Alistair's past that has been released in game that is, like Prince Rooter, the Arminta Jorgensdottir. Those are actual WoD characters. Those weren't, I didn't create them. I just worked them into the backstory. So learning about those characters as well and the conflict and turmoil that was going on at those times, basically that's what I tried to focus on, because you got X number of years that you're trying to flesh out. You can't actually detail it to 100%, but you want to get it to where if someone says, hey, between this time and this time, what were you doing, you at least know what you were doing.
Yeah, and it's fun to write up a character that's old, and then you think it's a great idea. I'm going to play an elder or make an NPC that's an elder, and then you're like, man, what are they doing between then and now? And I went down the rabbit hole, ended up filling in like a bunch of stuff in between, from the 1600s to now, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was almost like a creative writing exercise.
No, that was another one of the viewpoints I was trying to look at was look at someone who a real not a non-fictional character, somebody who has lived for 80 plus years and writes a biography about their life. That is a very full book, and that book is filled with someone's entire life experience of 80 years. Now times that by 4, 3, 2, how many times you have so much that your character has experienced. Their outlook is going to be almost alien.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the world has changed so much, and I mean, it's literally living multiple lifetimes, and becoming close to some coteries, and those coteries are long gone, and now you have this other group of people or other group of kindred that you're close with, knowing full well that they might go the wayside of some of your historical comrades. How much material do you have for Alistair? Is there like a novel sitting somewhere on your
to
be released at a future date?
Right.
So as I stated, I'm one of those eternal GMs. So when I get to play a character, I go deep.
Nice.
I go all out. I think my first draft for him was over 50 pages, and I ended up cutting it down to make it more manageable for Elijah to actually digest it properly.
Fantastic.
What a good friend.
There is basically a short story worth of
That's great
backstory for him.
Awesome.
I'm sure there's plenty of people that love the show that would be very interested in seeing that, especially if you come to a conclusion or once the secrets get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Once his backstory has been, and we might be even one of those things where we release transcripts of a particular part of the backstory,
right,
but not all of it.
Redact it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Just see what people speculate and fill in on themselves.
I love that. That's
cool.
one of my favorite parts, is seeing people come up with theories about Alistair and what he's done in his past. It's
cool.
It's amazing.
So when you
go ahead,
upon your concept, because you had a great concept, you wrote a lot of the backstory. Was there anything that changed between then and the actual portrayal of Alistair? Like once you started to roleplay him, was there anything that just felt more natural about the character that you had altered? And then did it affect the story that you had already written?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that one thing that did change is he got less cool. When I first wrote him, I was like, this guy's gonna be fucking cool, man. And then I realized, I'm like, no, he wouldn't be. He wouldn't be cool at all. This guy's gonna be he's gonna be like an old man.
What a square.
Right. He's gonna be very dorky. He's gonna be very out of style. But the one premise that I wanted to stick with him the entire way was that he, 2 words to sum him up is the sophisticated predator. That's what the kind of thing that I wanted to stick with him. I wanted him to be the apex of the boardroom and be able to go into any situation and have unfathomable confidence with it.
That's awesome.
That is really cool, and it does come across in the way you portray him. Very well done.
Thank you.
So, and I know obviously that there's 50 pages of story.
Yes.
What are there any particular surprises or elements to him that haven't come up yet that you really are hoping do? Obviously, without spoilers, but is there anything in mind you're like, I really hope this comes out on stream because you want to play it out?
Yeah. There is a lot of things that I do hope come out. He's met a lot of kindred in his time. He's had a lot of different experiences, and Elijah is very good at letting you think that he's not going to use something, and then out of left field, slightly hint it or bring it up. And for example, Kaido, who is Alistair's first embraced childer, he was a character that was already in the backstory as a ghoul, but the big release with him last night with Alistair basically have watching Kaido since he was 2 years old, and grooming him to be his successor. That was planned for since the start of the character's creation.
Awesome.
And it, took 20 plus episodes to even get to that point. So there is a lot of stuff that Alistair has yet to show. But again, there's more than just Alistair in the group, and there's a lot of other backstories, a lot of other complex plot hooks and story to be told. So
Awesome.
Well, plenty to look forward to, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So we talked about kind of voice and your mannerisms, but how do you prepare? What do you have, like a pre-game ritual? What does your process look like for really getting into character right before stream starts?
Well, I do have a Spotify playlist, and I typically on Mondays I will throw that on and just listen to it on repeat throughout the day. A lot of the songs that I have in there are things that help me connect to the character, help me relate with him. And of course, I also like to use those songs, and in particular songs, like to think about certain points of his past and certain key triggers that, defined who he became. And that definitely will help me get into the mood. But I think probably about an hour before the game even starts, I'll notice that I just stop talking like myself. And I start, okay, my name is Alistair Grayson now. And I drop my tone, I change my posture, and I kind of start getting into a little bit more method acting.
Fantastic.
But music and just putting myself into a mindset is how I usually do things.
Awesome.
So we're big fans of using playlists and music to try to get into character or inspire a game, inspire your approach. With a player character playlist, just my opinion, there are two schools of thought, right? You have, these are the songs that my character would listen to, right?
Mhm.
So it's my character's playlist, or these are the songs that encompass the tone and the feeling and things that really remind me of what it feels like to be this character. And they may not like the music whatsoever, but it just kind of gets you into that mood. Like, which one do you more go for?
My playlist is a blend of both, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I have pieces that are classical on there.
Yep.
That have nothing to do. The meaning of the song has nothing to do with anything that's happened to Alistair or his past, but it's music that he would listen to. It's music that was maybe created around the time when he was still alive that I like to put
Makes
on.
sense.
But then there's also songs on there where for example, I think I have the John Wick club music on there, because when that song comes on, the only thing I can think of is murder gloves being popped on and a whole room of people about ready to get into a whole lot of hurt. Like,
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I'm glad you both brought up the importance of it and the ways that you use it. That's something I actually haven't done with my characters or getting into characters. So it's something I'll probably try at some point, which would be
You should
Do it.
Yeah.
It can definitely, if you're the type of person where you relate to music, like then it will be easier for you to think like, yeah, what would my character like to listen to,
100%.
and think outside the box with it.
I like to also, especially post game, if you listen to that playlist that you listen to pre-game, after your session, you kind of re-listen to the playlist. And the game that I'm in, I drive about 2 hours to go to, so I have some time.
Sorry. It's your fault
No,
for moving like an entire state away.
it's true. But the cool part about it is I like to listen to music, so I'll just put on the playlist that I listen to on the way up. And there's something that like clicks. There'll be a song that the next time I listen to it, it'll kind of remind me of a big thing that happened in a session that we had. So it's almost as if, just like in real life, certain songs remind you of certain situations in your life. It's almost like you're kind of implanting these little memories in your player character that are connected with song and with music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, almost like you're kind of turning yourself into a Manchurian Candidate-esque person with, you know, with music for the campaign. Yeah, I 100% agree.
100%.
Yeah.
That's
like
a great analogy, the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that way. And these two definitely know that I live on Spotify 90% of the time. I've got
Yep.
I create playlists for other people's characters.
Do you
can
have
actually-
one for us?
No. Well, I do have a Providence playlist that is inspired by your characters. The only
Interesting.
I've built playlists for my wife's characters, and I've built a playlist for Mr. Chan from our old V20 game.
God.
Yeah, it's as bad as you think it is.
And a quick plug for the Gehenna Gaming Discord. If you join the Discord, you can see Ravnos what he's listening to at any moment of the day because he has a Spotify connected to his account.
And it doesn't get turned off because I usually don't ever pause it unless I'm on a work meeting. Anyway, back on topic. Talking about you obviously have a pretty wide breadth of gaming experience. What was like the standout favorite experience as either a player or a GM that you've ever had?
That is, oh man, that's a tough one because when you play a lot, like our first for our Pathfinder campaign, that went on for 100 and
Wow.
it was 168 sessions.
Whoa.
So that's we started streaming it halfway through the campaign.
Oh wow.
And so by the time we ended it, we were like 110, I think, somewhere around there. But we had already streamed about close to 50, or not streamed, but played about 50 sessions.
Nice.
But I think if I had to choose, I think my favorite moment while DMing is writing something for a player about, or taking something from a player's backstory, especially when they say, hey, this is something that's in my backstory. My character doesn't know, or I don't have any personal preference where this goes. You got free range with it. And they just throw the ball in your court and you go, okay, all right. And you look at it and you go, yeah, I got something for this. I think I can come up with something for this. And when it finally gets released in the game and you've been building it up and dropping hints throughout 10, 15 sessions and it finally drops and you just watch their eyes go wide and look right at you, you get that satisfaction being like, all right, good. Like I got what I was trying to get out of the player. And I think that's what I really love as a DM, is seeing the players react to the world, and not your world, but react to the story that they're building. I really get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing them enjoy that. I've had players cry, at the table. I've had players physically get upset because of a character death and have to leave the room because those relationships have been built up so much. And it's the same reason why in like Game of Thrones someone goes, I can't watch the show anymore, they killed my favorite character. Fuck that show. But to see that level of attachment to a fictional character is amazing.
Yeah, especially when you created.
Yeah.
Or they created and you took and ran with, and honored in a way.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's almost like you're as a DM or ST or GM, you're kind of weaving this universe in this world. You're essentially a god, and these NPCs.
It feels like that sometimes, but boy, sometimes you realize you have no control.
So I have a question regarding that.
Yes.
Have you ever killed off a character, an NPC or a PC, that you regret?
That I regret. Whew. Yeah, there's been characters that have players and NPCs that have died that I didn't want to see go, but I'm definitely the type of person where, especially if I'm going to be streaming it, if I'm having a casual play and it's not being streamed, it's, you know, strictly for
For funsies.
bunch of people, bunch of funds, I may, fudge a roll to let a player experience a little bit more fun during the game because it doesn't matter. But when it's a streamed event, or especially something that I'm homebrewing and I'm taking, very seriously, the roll's the roll, and sometimes the dice giveth, sometimes the dice taketh away. And if that player just luck isn't on their side, or an NPC that I make and I really feel passionate about, and they just don't make it through it. That's just what happens. And that's, there's a correlation with that in life. There's a lot of people know someone, could be very close to you, and just one day you don't get to see them anymore. And that can happen in tabletop. And there's a lot of moments where things can get very emotional in gaming, even if it's a game that's just for fun.
Yeah, like you're kind of like workshopping grief at a certain point in a safe environment where you're allowed to, express the range of emotions, such as when you killed Thornburn.
Yeah, we're getting some Rip Thornburns in chat.
Thornburn, I think, would probably be a good example of that. That was Chad's character. He played Bardrak in campaign 2. That was his second character he played. Too soon. Thornburn, unfortunately, was his first character that he truly ever got to play, and met his end when fighting against a phantasmal bear. But
It's a good way to go.
Yeah, he basically died protecting his party, but it was more or less bad rolls on his end. And the bear did enough damage to where it dropped him negative his Constitution modifier, and in Pathfinder 3.5, you're done.
That's it.
Nope.
Yeah, no save from that.
Yeah. So, flip side of that, from your playing experience, what is your absolute favorite character you've ever created and played?
From a player, well, I have only ever gotten to play 2 characters in Pathfinder. I've technically never ever gotten to play a game of D&D yet.
Same, actually.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Wait,
I had
none
2
of you?
characters.
No, I've played D&D, but I mean, I story told vampire for how many, like 17 years before I played it.
Mm-hmm. But as a player, I would say that my favorite would be Gator. I think playing Gator is such a joy to put on the cowboy hat and aviators and just go to town on being as rambunctious as I can without going over the fish mouth lip. And that's kind of where I try to play Gator, is how close can I get to fish without being a fish? Because I don't have him run around being like smoothies and tutus and cartwheel shenanigans. But I want him to definitely be. I like him to be a character where people get that when they get around him, they just go like, "Dude, I can't. I can only take mitosis."
Well, I want to let's talk about that real quick. I'm sorry, but the fish milk thing, that's something that it's very difficult to play a Malkavian, for new players especially, without going full fish milk.
Because they see bloodlines and that's what they think.
Right. And to be honest, even watching LA by Night, I love X, but the player himself is actually funny. So, it helps when you're able to be funny. But if you're not funny and you're playing a funny character, it doesn't really quite work out, and you kind of go into that fish mouth territory.
Yeah.
So how do you, or I guess a better question would be, what would be the I guess kind of perfect Malkavian that rides the line?
I think that and I attempt it with Gator, but I think the way I like to do that is to give actual good advice, but the delivery is poor. So
Yeah.
you're giving knowledge, but you aren't exactly it's the words that are coming out of your mouth are jumbled, or just you're using a lingo that the person that is supposed to be the recipient of the information doesn't understand it, or they just can't comprehend what you're trying to explain to them. So to them, it comes off as, this guy's a fucking lunatic. Like, this guy's insane. But if you actually dissect what they're saying, you go, oh, wait, no, this actually does make sense.
Yeah.
Just in a very weird way.
Yep.
Kind of like what's that Will Ferrell movie with their racing?
Talladega Nights.
Talladega Nights, where the guy's like, we go together like cocaine and waffles. You know, the sentiment is there, like, we belong together. But the way he's saying it is like, cocaine and waffles. Wait, what did you just say?
But then you could also, in a Malkavian aspect, the cocaine could just be powdered sugar.
Absolutely.
So,
but you don't know till you try it.
You guys have obviously never been down south. Cocaine and waffles make sense.
I'll take your word for it.
You guys just put everything with waffles. You call Malkavians crazy.
No, but I like that though. You're kind of, you know, you're giving advice, or you're giving insights, but the insights are kind of coded and kind of messed up and hard for people to really understand. How much involvement with the ST is involved? Like, I feel like there's extra involvement with your GM to play a Malkavian correctly.
So that's why I love Marilyn so much in our game. Is Marilyn is a beautiful representation of a Malkavian that is nothing like a fish Malk, because she doesn't have these random, goofy, comical outbursts. Like, the person in our coterie that really does that is Memphis. Like, Memphis is the one that has the ridiculous shit. Usually you expect the Malkavian to be the one doing that, but she doesn't really, as far as working with Elijah on it. Like, when they go into the network, their scenes for the web, 100% ad lib, and she just plays with it. But as far as how you want to, are you asking like more or less how she tries to get her information from that and how he delivers it?
Yeah, like, is there I guess, is there off camera information that's being passed, or is it all just kind of improv and nonverbals? And
it's all improv. Yeah. So
Nice.
as far as passing information, Elijah does a very good job of being ready at any moment for her just to cast premonition on anything she touches.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice. So we're going to ask one more question, then we're going to open it up to viewers for a couple questions, take a break, and then we'll come back in with a slight change in the line of questioning. We'll jump into more like your approach to GMing and storytelling and grill you on that. So drop some questions in chat if you have them, and we'll ask one or two. But for you, what is your favorite system?
My favorite system, I'll have to say that after doing so much studying on 5e, I'm loving 5e just because of how it's geared for theater of the mind when it comes to D&D. And I started with Pathfinder, which is essentially just 3.5 reskinned.
Yep.
And with that, it's so crunchy. There's so many, like, there's literally a stat block for anything you could possibly want rules for. What is my advantage, or what's my bonuses or negatives while I'm mounted on a horse? If I'm moving at this speed, like how many actions, and it just gets so confusing that in a stream sense, it's terrible because it slows the game down. If you're trying to create a game where people can watch it and feel connected to the narrative, it's hard to do that when someone goes, okay, wait, stop, hold on, I got to do the calculation for this, this, which is why I think Vampire excels. And in my opinion, I think Vampire and games like Vampire, games like Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, because those are on a D6 system.
Yep.
They excel at being a narrative-driven game as opposed to D&D, but 5e I think is the closest form to it. And I could argue that I could take any setting and put it in 5e.
Oh yeah.
So you could literally take any setting. Like if you wanted to play VTM but with 5e rules, you could do it. But you can't do that with every system. It's really crazy how universal and versatile that 5e is. That's kind of why I like it, is just because it gives you the tools as a DM to just do whatever you want.
I feel like we need to have you back for a second episode where you talk more about how you can pop different things into 5e, because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a master class in 5e.
Yeah, why not? So, but
Fantastic.
yeah, we do have a break coming up, and community members, if you want to submit a question for our guest, please put it in the chat room and we will address it.
Another question from me, actually, while we give people a chance to drop them in. So that question, your answer was really geared more towards running games. What about playing it? Same answer or different?
Playing it, I would say, well, I haven't gotten to play D&D yet. I've only ever gotten to run it. So I would have to say that playing V5. V5 is very friendly for, I would say, veterans of the game and anyone who's been playing from first edition to V5 and people who are just picking it up. It's very, very user friendly. And it's one of those things where as a kid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how many dots you count on one hand when you're a kid. It's very easy to learn the system.
Especially those hunger dice.
Yeah,
it's a very cool component.
And I personally am I'm a bigger fan of the hunger dice as opposed to the gas tank method.
Oh yeah,
where it was, you just like, oh, I have this much blood, and once I burn through this, now I'm going to be hungry. And I think when I watched the German presentation for it, they explained like, who here in the room, 1 out of 10, how hungry are you? And like everyone's like 4, 7, 6, like, and no one had there wasn't like a solid number around the board. He's like, exactly, like no one really knows how hungry you are at any given time. Neither should a kindred.
We've talked in the past about how it's changed from a resource management game to a risk management game. Which
very much so.
I think is the best analogy for it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So what actually do we have any audience questions?
We do.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask the most important one that we've received so far, which is from Rain.
Naturally.
Which is, why do you hate me?
Because you're too smart, Rain. You're too smart. That's why.
Don't dodge the question.
But in all seriousness, what is your favorite character archetype to portray, or that you would like to portray in the future?
I really like playing sleazebags. I love playing
It's a great answer.
I love playing sleazy, slimy criminals.
Nice.
Characters that just have no disregard for politeness or disregard. They completely don't care about anyone's feelings, and especially if they're just generally just awful to be around, because you don't get to you don't ever do that in real life. You don't ever go up to someone and just tell someone off or be a complete jerk to them because that's a terrible thing to do. You shouldn't do that. But in a game, you get to play a villain, and I love playing villains. And it's another appeal to being a DM, is I get to be the bad guy.
But yeah.
So on the flip side, what would be the character that would be like closest to you? Do you enjoy playing a character that, like an NPC that's closest to you in real life?
I think if I had to, I would say, let me see if there's a character. I've never really made a character that's really close to me. But I do occasionally will make characters that have elements of me. I mean, Venris from my first campaign, He started off very much like me, but the more that character evolved and the more, he became a reincarnated god, that got away from me because I'm not a god. So there's no longer a similarity in that. And the players saw that. The players saw that there was an emotional change with him as the game continued to go forward. But yeah, if I had to say an archetype that was more like me, it'd be a very blunt, barbarian-esque type individual, someone who's good to, he's gonna be honest, worth his word, but also is good to, tell you how it is too. So
Very nice. Awesome. All right, so we're going to take a couple minute break, stretch your legs, use the bathroom, grab a drink, but we'll be back. Stay tuned.
Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Perfect timing. All
Is this
right.
a Woodland Critter Christmas?
Yes. It could turn into it. All right. Thank you for sticking around, everyone. We're back. Obviously, hail Satan. But
Those are my vocal
if
warm-ups.
literally any of these people are in our Discord, that's a fairly regular conversation, so that shouldn't be surprising.
Somebody's mom from the 1980s, their head just exploded.
So we did get one good question that I'm going to ask before we jump into the rest of ours while we were on break. McStarper Studios asked, what made you decide to start streaming your games?
I think so. When I used to DM for my younger brother, a bunch of my friends, personal friends, people that aren't even in the stream, except for Carl, the individual who plays Memphis. He actually was part of that group. They were always pushing me to go, hey, we should really stream these. These are really entertaining. These are really fun. And I always kind of put it off. I didn't really like where we played. We played in a basement. I mean, we play in a basement now, but we at least made it presentable. But
Nice basement.
Thank you. But I didn't like the setup. I didn't like, the table. The equipment was expensive. There was a lot of factors in it that just it wasn't right at the time. And eventually later on, when I actually started streaming video games, I started to realize, hey, we probably could stream these now. I'm already have most of the equipment, and there's an interest in the community. Some people want to see it, and I personally think that there's not enough tabletop streams out there. There's so few and far in between that I wanted to start adding to it. And then another outlining goal for me in my life is to eventually get into film and get into directing and writing.
Awesome.
So to me, they're both subjective art, film, DMing. In a weird way, it is a form of art.
Yeah, it's
100%.
directing your own movie in a way.
Yeah, it's a collective storytelling and everything else. There is a question that I have looming actually regarding this. Is the difference between playing a game just at a tabletop or streaming a game? What are the primary differences outside of the obvious of, okay guys, we're getting ready to shoot, or trying to have less side table talk? What are the primary differences that you see?
I think the primary difference is that if you are streaming a tabletop game, one and foremost, the priority should be that everyone involved in it should be having fun. I think making sure that you are streaming to make sure that it's entertaining for the viewers, but at the same time, you need to make sure that everyone that's involved in the project is having fun and is passionate. I think the key word about that is passionate about it. If they're not passionate about it and they're doing this just because they think they're gonna get Ninja's paycheck, then it's not gonna happen. Or if they think they're gonna be the next Critical Role, it's not gonna happen. Like, you need to have a passion for it.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
100%.
And that's how all those people get where they are. Passion, Put the horse in front of the cart, people.
So since we're on the subject, what do you? Don't mention any names, but what is a common pitfall that you see in tabletop streams today that you kind of wish would be fixed?
Probably a lot of scenes where individuals are engaged in role play, and then across the table, someone's going like, "Yeah, I got school tomorrow. Yeah, I'll be there. Don't worry. Yeah, okay." And it's so as a viewer, you're watching it and you're going like, "Please, just stop. Please stop. I'm trying to listen to the role play."
Please have technical difficulties.
Yeah,
I hate that. Oh yeah.
But there is a lot of people out there that do have really great performances. Their equipment may not be Hollywood top-notch level, but I mean, my equipment is nowhere near as good as what it could be, but we do it the best that we can with it. But there is a lot of people that give really, really solid performances, and they don't have really good cameras. They don't have very good mics, and there's a lot of people that won't give them a chance because they're expecting a certain criteria of quality.
Yeah.
And I'll remind everybody, we were talking about the Gentleman Gamer, but there was another actual play that was going on during what I like to call the dark time before V20, between V20 and V5.
The sad times.
The sad times where there wasn't much going on, except for some of these little guys like Twin Cities by Night.
Yes.
And it was just audio. But it was a bunch of people who loved the game and were very passionate about it and probably didn't have the most sophisticated gear. But it didn't matter. It was a fun, entertaining game. It's still going on today. And you actually inspired me. There's probably some people or some streams on Twitch that I've kind of written off just because the camera might be a little chintzy, but the people playing might be really entertaining.
Yeah, being humble is definitely something that as you continue your road of being a streamer, you start to realize, because someone that you see and you go, oh, well, look at this, and you realize, oh, that was you 6 months ago. That was you a year ago. You were there, and maybe they're just not where you're at right now, and maybe they never will. But there's no reason to discourage people from pursuing what they want to do. It's a reason why it's a free, open platform for anyone to do. But
nicely,
I think that I hit the nail earlier about it being subjective.
Absolutely.
What you like isn't necessarily what someone else is going to like. You could have somebody say, well, The Godfather Part 1 is one of my favorite films ever, and there's a lot of critics that would agree with that person, and there's another person that goes, nah, Godfather's shit, I hate that movie.
Right.
And that person likes Godfather 3.
Yeah, and that's just their perspective. That's their viewpoint on what they believe film to be. So
yeah.
And just to tack onto that from my own perspective, and obviously this bias as a stream that's just starting up, but people also need to remember that those streams are only going to improve their audio quality and improve their video quality if you stick around and follow them and sub to them and give them some money so that they can afford it. Streaming equipment is expensive. I mean, you guys have been steadily upgrading some of your gear as you've gone, and there was a follow-up question to our initial one, which was how many different iterations of your tabletop streaming setup have you gone?
How many? Let's see. We originally started off upstairs in my living room, because that's where I was streaming with my normal games, and where we stream has to be close to my computer. And I currently had someone living in my basement, so I wasn't able to move it down here. But once I moved out of there, our original tables were actually just plastic Walmart folded tables that we created into like an 8 shape so that we could put cameras in between them and spread everything out. And it made a terrible echo with anytime you put anything on the table, and it was wobbly. It was horrible. And
good advice.
The table that we play on now, I ended up building that with my father, and
nice.
It's 100 times better than what we were doing. The cameras upgraded, the lighting upgraded, the location upgraded, and even in the location we're at now, we actually ended up moving Elijah to the other side of the table just so that the computer screen and things like that were out of the shot, trying to make it as studio-esque as we could. But eventually, our goal is to move it to an actual studio location. That is the next step, because this is pretty much where we've gotten to. That's the next step.
Very awesome. Well, I mean, the quality on your show is fantastic.
Thank you.
You've definitely been doing a good job with all of that. Let's switch veins here a little bit. We definitely want to. So basically, the main reason that we really wanted to bring you on was we wanted to talk about your approach to storytelling. And so you are a very experienced GM, obviously. How much prep and I think that you've already answered this question actually, but like, how much prep do you put into your games? We've seen you stream just building maps. We've seen you stream other aspects of campaign planning. But like, if you if you're going to quantify it and put like hours behind it, how much time do you spend planning before you even start like the first session of a game?
So for campaign 2 that's coming out, this is going to be the first homebrew world that's 100% homebrewed as far as area of world map, terrain, cities, etc. Our first campaign, to make things easier on me, I just used Galarian from Pathfinder as a whole, because the source on the countries and it was easier to just grab work off of that. But there was a lot of things that I just didn't like. I didn't like feeling gated. I also don't like writing content off of something that's already been written, because then your players could just go read the book.
Right.
Which I'm not saying that they ever would do that, but it's a possibility that they could do that, or they could have read it in the past before you even started this. That's not really their fault if they read the material already.
Yep.
But I think if I had to quantify how much time you're going to put into starting a campaign, I think don't worry about building the world. Build where you're going to start and the general concept of what the campaign is going to begin with. And I would say I've probably, for the start of campaign 2, dedicated somewhere around, I would say probably about 35, 40 hours.
Nice.
About a work week.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then as the campaign goes, how much time do you spend like pre-session, like prepping and getting everything ready?
I used to be that DM that tried to over prep everything. That just was like, anything that could possibly go wrong, I'm going to prep for it. And I quickly realized that your players are going to throw whatever the hell you prepped right out the window. Especially if you have a player like Carl who plays Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has a knack for, in fact, his ongoing joke was, at any sight of a railroad, he would immediately just start going straight chaotic neutral and would overthrow anything you had planned. So I would say I probably do about 6 hours pre-sesh to plan for a game.
Nice.
So, what kind of advice would you give, aspiring DMs who really do want to tell a general story, who do want to establish a storyline, not so much put the rails on, but at the very least, kind of guide the players towards a beginning, middle, and end. What kind of advice would you give those GMs?
I would say work off of what the player wants.
Yeah.
That's a good way to start with it. I mean, if you are going to try to, I like to use the analogy, you're essentially a puppeteer with invisible strings, but you're not controlling the players, you're controlling the world around the players. And if you let the players see the strings, then they're going to know what's up.
Yep.
But if they think that their choice is the choice that their character wants or what they're trying to pursue. So let's say, your player B has X goal and you want this start, middle, and end, and you use X goal as the breadcrumbs and work it in there. They're gonna follow it 9 times out of 10 because that's what their player wants. And if they go against it, then after the session, be like, you remember that your player wants to do this. And if sometimes you have players go, oh, that's right, my player does want that. Oh, I completely forgot.
That happens with surprising frequency.
Yes.
I will say I definitely feel you on the wild card thing, because I have 2 of them in the V5 Chronicle I'm running. One of them is sitting right here.
Marchosius.
Was that me? Am I the wild card? I'm not the wild card, am I? I thought you were talking about you.
It's not you, Mark. And then the other one is our player who's playing a Malkavian, so it's fitting. But
perfect.
Yeah, but there's something great about that too, though. Like the way that you have 2 wild cards that make decisions that I mean, as a player who tries to kind of stay, this is just what I do. I try to stay at least a little bit within like the playground that I can kind of sense that the ST or GM is trying to put together. And seeing another player, Def Malk, that tries to go off of those rails and explore, it's really exciting. It's really fun to watch.
I think I personally think every table needs at least one person like that.
Yeah,
Absolutely, 100%.
Preferably two, because if you only have one, it can actually end up annoying the other players if they're constantly doing it. But if you have two and they can play off of each other, it can really change the shape of the game entirely.
And it will make you inevitably a better DM.
Oh yeah,
because you have to learn how to. Because that's how my first campaign before the stream, back with my original group, there was 2 wild cards, and both of them. Do you mind if I give you a scenario?
No,
No,
please.
not at all.
Okay. The city of White Throne, which is far in the northern country of Irison and Galeria. I had my my particular player who was playing Baltair Bloodtrack, dwarf fighter, was approached by a crying, young, sobbing little boy, exclaiming that his parents were trapped within a damaged structure and was about to fall within the city. And Baltair's reaction was to kick the child in the groin. So because they were currently dealing with an enemy that was changing shape. So his first reaction was, it's not a real boy. It was a real boy. He indeed did kick a small child.
That is brings a tear to your eye. Beautiful level of.
And you experience things like that, and you're just like, you can't predict things like that as a DM. You have to just, okay, this is what we're doing.
Okay. That just because this is a very, very, very bad segue off of that, because that was a fantastic character name. I'm going to ask all 3 of you this. Best character name you've ever heard at a table.
Oof.
And I mean, like, absurd.
At a table.
Best character name.
I like this one a lot only because it sounds like a wrestler. Ronnie Steele.
Or a porn star.
Or a porn star.
Or a porn star. Yeah. Or a porn star
name.
Yeah. Or, I mean, why not both?
There was a particularly ridiculous name that I do remember a player of mine having, but I'm having troubles recalling it.
Can any of the other
NearDark
Studios crew help out there? What is it, Death Malk?
The mayor of Slamtown.
Oh God, no.
The mayor of Slamtown?
Yeah.
It's a Bruja NPC I made as a throwaway, and another ST took it and ran with it farther than I ever would have wanted them to.
Much farther than it ever should have gone. Oh my God.
I think.
Do you think he's going to take a trip to Providence? Because that would be amazing. I just like the name.
No.
I think in our wrestling one shot, Cookie had Bruno Boulder Buns was a good one.
That was a good one. That was a really good one.
And then I think the best, the goofiest NPC name that I ever had was probably Bo Boofbo, which was a hill giant.
Nice.
Bo Boofbo. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Mine was Kale Doom Trousers, a tiefling.
Kale Doom
warlock.
Trousers.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He was a tiefling warlock for in 4E.
Fantastic.
That was a good one. All right. Back on track. Sorry, I love hearing other people's names in like D&D games because you can just go completely absurd with it and it still makes perfect sense.
Makes sense somehow.
So, a lot of game masters like to explore different themes in the games that they're running. What are some of your favorite themes that you like to explore in the stories you tell?
Any story I tell will have at least at some point gothic horror. if it's fairly certain that in the campaign 2 there will be a particular area of the world that will essentially be Bloodborne, the video game.
I believe I was talking with you while you were building that area on the map.
Yes, you were. I'm a very, very big fan of Gothic horror. I love implementing it in pretty much any setting that I do, especially in fantasy. Um, I think Grimdark is another one. I typically like the grittier, stylized versions of worlds. If I had to give a good representation of what Campaign 2 is going to be a blend of, somewhere between Diablo and Witcher 3.
That's
You know,
nice.
it's
Beautiful.
not not Warhammer Grimdark where it's just over the top, but not not whimsical. So
Awesome.
Yeah, there's not nearly enough of that, to be perfectly honest. Kind of one of the reasons why I'm so driven towards Vampire and other games like it because of that.
Possibly.
I think it was one of the things that I, and not trying to derail the question at all, but I think when I first was starting the concept for Campaign 2, I wanted to not copy Critical Role. That was my kind of like my goal is like, that's already as an established thing. And I was looking at Matt's world and how Matt likes to narrate his game and how he likes to, have it visualized. And, I wanted to have a darker tale. I wanted my world to be more gloomy, a little bit more grim, but not so grim that anyone watching is gonna be like, I just feel depressed now. Like I just can't. Like
no, they could come watch our Cult game for that.
Yeah. There, you can go do that.
Yes. Coming this winter, by the way, Gehenna Gaming is another plug. Gehenna Gaming will be launching our very first foray into Cult Divinity Lost.
Very curious about that, by the way.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful core book if you've ever seen it. The game itself can be either completely off the wall insane, and I keep calling it the black metal of tabletop games.
It is.
Definitely accurate.
It's beautiful though. Yeah.
I like that. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But going back to the subject at hand. There's something about, my first introduction to tabletop gaming was Dungeons and Dragons as most. But I've always liked that whole darker themes and grittier tones and setting. So the fact that you're going to be taking a similar kind of approach with a game that people typically associate with, adventure, come on, let's go.
Right. Yes.
And Lord of the Rings, there's something about it making it really dark and gritty and visceral. I think is probably very exciting for a lot of fans.
Mm-hmm. And that's really what I wanted to provide for the viewers is give something that's outside of, and I don't mean this in any sort of like negative or disrespectful way at all, but if I was going to compare like a Critical Role or like Knights of the Everflame, like that's going to be like the MCU, like that's going to be the Marvel, the Disney version. I wanted to do something that's more on like the DCEU or more on the darker side of it, just not as more successful, obviously, than how the DCEU has been doing with their films.
But if you notice DCU, if you notice DC when they go dark, when they really lean into what their comics essentially are, it's successful. Look at Joker.
Yeah, Joker did very well.
Right.
Swamp Thing before they canceled it after 2 episodes.
# save Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
I think when they focus on the theme of the character and really boil it down to the heart of it, they succeed. So like Wonder Woman, other good example.
Yeah.
Was great.
It's fantastic.
The reboot of New 52's Aquaman, where it's a lot more of a sense of wonder than camp. It really benefited the genre.
Jada just said Tyrus Bane's full name is the one you were trying to think of.
Oh, okay. All right. It's Tyrus Bane was a character. He was a player character. He had an NPC. There was okay. Wow. I would have to dig deep for this. So, there was an NPC that Tyrus, the player character, was rivaling with, and he was a nobleman, and I gave him a name, and it was, it's like 19 names. I can't quote it
Beautiful.
verbatim,
Beautiful.
but it was ridiculous.
Well, if next time we have you come on, I expect you to be able to recite
I'll
all
find my
19.
notes somewhere, and I'll rattle it off. It's
Beautiful.
absolutely preposterous.
I've got a good one that my wife's friend is a new player at D&D, and he thought, you know, a lot of the silliness of D&D can get ridiculous. So apparently there's a player at his table named Donklar, who's a Goliath rogue. No stealth at all, just intimidation. If anyone caught him sneaking about, he'd scream, "You do not see Donklar."
Oh god, that reminds me. There was a game I was running where we had a half orc roll a critical success on a stealth roll, but he was standing on top of a barren hilltop, so he grabbed the party's gnome and hid behind him.
Yeah.
I was like, it's critical success. You pass. But what?
There's something in my eye. You win.
Yeah.
And that's actually, it's funny that you bring that story up too, because that's one of the reasons why I like 5e so much. In 3 point or 3 point, not 3.5, but in Pathfinder 2 second edition, you know, a natural 1 and a natural 20 are a critical fail and a critical success on anything. And in 5e, a natural 20 doesn't mean you succeed
Nice.
on anything that's not an attack or a death save.
Yeah.
Like, so if you roll a, you know, basically it was to stop things where people go like, my character jumps to the moon. Like, all right, roll for it. And they roll a 20. Like, that means I get to the moon. Like, no, it doesn't. Like, that's impossible. You can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a 3.5 game, I think. So.
Yep. So it's an automatic success.
Yep. Okay. Alrighty. Mark, why don't you get us back on track here?
Okay, so you know, you were talking earlier about, you know, some of the settings of you know, completely home brewing, a completely new setting of your own creation, or working with another setting from something that's already pre-baked. How do you familiarize yourself with that setting or city or region, particularly as it relates to not so much D&D, but I want to focus a little bit more on vampire.
Okay.
You know, whether it be taking a city like New York or Chicago or any city and that has a core book, or taking a city of your own and creating something new. Like, how do you familiarize yourself with that setting?
I think making a modern city on your own would be a tough feat, because that's going to be the type of thing where it just depends on how picky you are as an ST.
Yeah.
How detailed are you going to want it? Because I know there's tons of things that I make all the time when I'm prepping for a game or prepping for world content that will never be discussed. It will never be touched. But
Like what percentage do you think is not touched?
Oh, I would say probably a good 50 to 75%, probably not touched. I'd say the majority of the content that you make isn't going to be properly used. And like, to use an example of this, you know, you look at Vampire. Most of what your players are going to do is say, I go from location A to location B.
Mm-hmm.
I take Uber. I take my car. I drive, you know, there. I get out, I go inside. And the places they typically are going are places that they're familiar with, or they're, you know, they've been to multiple times. You rarely get a player go, okay, what street am I on? Okay, you may get that. You maybe go, you're on 13th Street. Okay. How many stores are on 13th Street? Okay, and then what stores are on 13th Street? Name them all. Like, you rarely get players that do that.
You should come sit at our table sometime. Watch, because that's Yeah, you could just hide right now.
if that is happening, where there is a a player that's getting extremely detailed, how many sewer manholes are in the street, where are all my how tall are the how many stoplights, how many stop signs, and they want to know every specific detail of everything. Are the telephone wires on the left side of the road or the right side of the road? Like those are details that you typically are leaving up to the imagination for a player to think themselves,
Yeah.
unless it's specifically being brought up in the narrative. Like your car crashes into the light pole, or you are attempting to climb the light pole.
Right.
But if you were to actually detail every street to that level and that degree, I mean, you're never going to start the game because you're going to be
Right.
too busy building a damn city.
Right. Absolutely.
So I guess that goes back to the question of how granular do you get? But with either game, with any setting, when you're creating something of your own making, how granular do you go? Obviously, we're not looking at heights of trees or of of light poles, but are you leaving some of the map kind of fluid, and it could be a river, it could be a road, depending on where things go?
Mhm. I get, when it comes to cities and cities, I get pretty granular. I get
Yeah.
very down to the nitty gritty, especially with fantasy cities, because there's a little bit more leeway with that. With modern cities, there's a lot more. It's more condensed. It's more compact. Population is increased.
Yep.
You got more variables. There's people basically in a big city. Doesn't matter. Chicago, New York, DC, Miami, LA. It is 24/7, round the clock. There's people on the streets. People are moving. People are doing stuff. Cars are going.
Perfect
In a
location.
fantasy setting, after the sun goes down, people are getting drunk or sleeping. Like that's pretty much what most people are doing. But as far as how nitty gritty do I get it, I'll write down, okay, there's 16 murder slots in, one of the turrets of a tower, where arrows can shoot out of it. Players aren't ever going to ask that question. They're not going to say, how many, murder holes are there to shoot arrows out on the side of this castle.
Yeah.
But, I'll have it there in case I can use that and see how many attacks can go out of that building. But as far as geographical or natural terrain, very lucid with that, because that kind of lets you shape it how you want it.
So follow-up question is how many I guess, what is the percentage of NPCs that you kind of create on the spot due to an interaction compared to the ones that you pre-plan?
I would say the ones I create on the spot are definitely people on the street.
Yeah.
Individuals that if I have a player that just wants to ask a random person they see walking down the street, typically that person I'm just going to make up right there on the spot. I might have a cheat sheet of just random names I've had doodled down while I'm playing. That way, if they're like, "What's your name?" I can just look over, Gregory, just give them off, a good random name. But if you are going into any sort of established residence or a building or anything like that, I'm typically going to have a plan for at least who they're going to encounter, unless it was a situation where they're like, I'm going to break into this random house that I just found. Who's inside? Like, well, I don't know who's inside because I wasn't planning for this.
Nice. So with that level of world building overall in mind, how do you strike a comfortable balance between the story and the world you've created, and then also the characters' backstories and what they've done past before the session, before the campaign starts?
That is a beautiful question. I'm actually really glad that you asked that question, because that is something that, as a DM, I've learned over time to not make the story, or I guess the plan or the end goal, really a focal objective point. At least right at the beginning, if you're going to do an open world type setting, where it's sandbox, not railroad. The moment you start pressing plot onto the players is the moment they're going to start feeling the tracks getting laid down, and they're going to start feeling that sandbox getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Let the players make their own choice. Let them choose what they want to do, and through their experience as being a player, they will eventually you will build the story with them, and you will start making an overarching story. And I would avoid doomsday plots. I would avoid the bomb timer plots. Avoid the things where it's like, you have this much time to get this done, and if you don't get this done, everything's kaboom, because your players aren't going to get it done. And if they do get it done, it's because they were railroaded. It's because you forced them onto that track.
Nicely.
Like the Gehenna scenario book.
Yeah. Yeah, where everything was just end of days.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So we only have a few more questions for Quinton. So if you want to ask him anything you want, drop it in chat, and we will roll into those questions once we finish the ones that we've prepared. So please let us know whatever you're curious about. We will definitely ask them. We have plenty of time. But now we're moving into. I'm going to be changing the order document that I shared with my co-host here, so apologies. But so I will say, you do fantastic voices as all of your characters and your NPCs. I love the inflection you use for Alistair in particular. Do you spend a lot of time working on those voices and kind of shaping the different personalities, or you kind of do what seems natural at the time?
When I'm DMing, a lot of it's on the fly.
Yeah.
When I'm DMing and it's a random character, a lot of it is just me changing inflection. If it's going to be a popular NPC, or not, I shouldn't say popular. If it's going to be a prominent NPC, then the players are going to pick up on it, because typically I'll have a unique voice for them, especially if they're going to be showing up more than once. When that character returns, I want them to know exactly who this person is, not them to go, wait, who are you again? And you can do that without a voice. It's just to me more dramatic and more like a thespian to enter into a scene. And a particular character I think that I know Christy is going to be excited to hear is Cervantes. So when Cervantes would walk into a room, his voice, he was a tiefling, and he was, of course, the sleazebag archetype that I talked about. But his voice was, my name is Cervantes. And he had like this rattly growl and with his southern draw to his voice. And the moment he'd open his mouth, like everyone was like, oh shit, it's Cervantes. And I didn't even have to say his name. They'd just be like, how you all doing? And I think that when you start to get that voice, then the personality almost becomes molded with it.
Yeah, it almost builds itself at that point.
Builds it with the voice. Because the more I started talking like that, I was like, yeah, I am kind of a douchebag. Like it kind of just worked its way into it.
Fantastic.
So much like a lot of people who do various voices, I imagine that you've probably been doing voices since you were a kid.
Yes.
Probably, copying voices of from movies and celebrities and all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite famous person or character that you can do that you've been doing for a while?
Ooh, famous person or character. I'll actually tell you what. Elijah does this one a lot better. He does this action really well, but I really like Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he'll admit it. Sometimes you can hear it slip a little bit with his Prince Kevin Jackson. But the whole like, tell me, does your mother sew? Boom! Tell her to sew that. Like, it's it's fun.
That's
to do
great.
That. Yeah. He actually can do it very well. I just goofing off when I do it.
Very nice. So, more fun questions. If you could get anyone together at a table to run a one shot, who would you run it for?
Okay. All right. You guys are going to have to get with me on this one. All right. Number 1, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Because I feel like he would just be fantastic at a table.
And he would have
When he
fun, too.
does, doesn't he? Like he hasn't he said that he plays D&D?
I'm not, if he does, I'm unaware. But I would definitely like to see him play a tabletop. Number 2, I would definitely say Will Ferrell, and because they work well together, John C. Reilly, because they're just improv gods.
Cocaine and waffles.
Yeah, exactly. And then to wrap it up, I would have to say Trent Reznor, because you got to have a broody warlock in the group.
Yes.
And then last but not least, and that's just because the guy doesn't get to play enough, Matt Mercer, just because I love seeing him play. I can tell every time he plays, I'm like, he's so excited to play. I feel for him.
Awesome.
Hold on. Can I throw it back to you guys?
Oh
Ravnus,
God.
what about you?
Oh God. No, I haven't prepped. I have no idea.
I'm ready.
What do you got?
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Who else?
Shakespearean actor right there. That is Shakespearean trained. Fantastic. Also think David Bowie, rest in peace, but David Bowie would be a fantastic individual to have at my table.
Yeah, I feel like he would be really funny at the table too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Shoot, what's his name? From Portlandia.
Oh yeah. The drummer from SNL.
Was he? Oh yeah, I mean I know he's a
Yeah. I don't. It's a random fact that he's a drummer.
Fred
but,
Armisen?
Yeah. Fred Armisen. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to have him at a table. So many of the impressions that I do in voices from my games, I kind of take a lot of like just interesting voices that he does, and I just run with them.
Nice.
You know.
I would add to your table a comedian named James Idomian. James Idomian. He does the perfect Bernie Sanders. But he does a whole bunch of other voices. He's got a podcast called The Underculture, and it's hilarious. He does voices of various.
Well, now all I can see is Bernie Sanders as a wizard. So.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I mean, obviously.
I would also do Triumph, the guy who does the voice for Triumph the Insult Dog.
But who is the comedian that does his voice?
I'm not sure, but he does a good Bernie Sanders.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Let's see.
I would also select Poppy, and
Of course you would.
yeah, I would select Poppy for many things.
I have a good one that's a political shout out. Vermin Supreme.
Yes, Vermin Supreme.
Vermin Supreme.
Also as a wizard.
He's
also definitely a wizard. 100% a wizard.
Yeah.
100%.
What about you? What about you, Marchosius?
Okay. Oh gosh. Yeah, I feel like Marilyn Manson would be fun for about the first half hour.
Yeah, actually, I 100% agree with that. I feel like he'd be like, yeah, he's really good, and then after half hour, you'd be like, I can't
do it anymore. Yeah, sorry, you gotta go. You have to get him when he's sober, and then as the game progresses, he drinks more and more, and it's just unbearable.
You know, I would have Stephen Wright, the comedian, at my table, but I wouldn't be able to play. I'd be dying. His deadpan delivery would just kill me.
Someone in the chat said Jason Momoa.
Oh, Jason Momoa, I think would be
fun.
a fan. And you know what? I think he'd be a great bard.
Oh yeah.
I think for 100% sure he'd be a fantastic bard.
Oh yeah.
Well, especially the amount of times that I've seen Moana with my daughters, he would definitely be, for sure. Is that Jason Momoa?
He's not in Moana.
That's the Rock, dude.
Is that The Rock?
That's the Rock.
Definitely not in Moana.
I'm not going to apologize, but I will. Damn it.
I saw
God
the pause on both.
You're the worst.
I was like, what?
No, Jason Momoa was in Game of Thrones and Aquaman. I'm the worst.
You're also forgetting the most important thing he was in, which is Stargate Atlantis. because
He was
I am a
in Stargate.
nerd.
Was he the guy with the thing on his head?
No,
No.
that's Stargate SG-1.
That's-
First off,
I don't.
secondly,
I've never seen Stargate.
well, fix yourself.
I'm done talking. I'm not allowed to talk anymore.
All right, all right. I have my list. I
All right, what do you
had a
got?
little bit of time to think about it. This is just spitballing. Conan O'Brien, Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, and what's his name? I'm blanking now. But those three, 100%, because I feel like they would just be hysterical and
They'd all
particularly-
feed off of each other.
Yeah, exactly. They'd play off each other amazingly well. And I just had another one and I completely lost it.
I would kind of like to see actual politicians play an RPG. You know what I mean? Like take just all the Democrats that are running right now, and just put them in a setting.
That's a lot of
Bill-
players at a table.
Yeah, there'll be 20 of them, but I feel like it would be very interesting.
Bill Clinton, the bard with the saxophone. Hey, you're new around this village. Haven't seen you at the tavern before.
That's a good Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
So I feel like when we're asking this around the table, it seems like we're kind of focused on. So we've mentioned Bard a few times,
Yeah.
and we're talking about D&D. But if you had to name 3 coterie members for vampire specifically, I think that
Characters in the
changes it.
universe.
I think that changes it drastically.
Yeah, it does a
Because
little
if
bit.
I was going to choose for vampire, it'd be a completely different set of people.
I would definitely pick Abath.
Oh god.
Abath.
Abath. Yeah.
He would be a Bruja for sure, or a Malkavian.
Yeah.
I think I would go with Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Charlie Day.
Yeah.
Because Charlie Day would be an amazing Malkavian.
Yes,
Just-
he would.
Absolutely killer Malkavian.
He might be.
And
one.
then, actually, you know what? Just might as well throw Danny DeVito in there too, because Danny DeVito would be
Yeah.
great.
We
That was
just have
gonna
the whole cast of It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, just the entire cast of it. They're a coterie in itself.
Yeah. Every time you were talking about sleazeball characters, I was like, God damn it, I would love to have a Danny DeVito character.
You kind of already have had a Danny DeVito character.
I have. It was great. I want to do it again.
Final Sputsman.
Yep.
Bernie for
Is that,
hire.
is that the lawyer? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton as Prince, that would be
Holy
amazing.
shit.
I
yeah.
love Tilda Swinton, and she should be
I think she might actually be a real vampire. I don't think I've ever seen her age. Like,
Yeah.
Have you seen
her and,
Only Lovers Left Alive? Is it Only
Yeah,
Lovers Left Alive?
it's
Yeah.
a very good movie with her and Tom Hiddleston.
She also played David Bowie in a David Bowie video.
Are you sure that that Tilda Swinton isn't actually just David Bowie?
She could be actually David Bowie. You might be right, actually.
that could be a thing.
David Bowie didn't actually kill. He didn't actually die. He just got tired of playing David Bowie. Wanted to keep playing.
Have you seen what's that show about the brothers? The Venture Brothers, and David
Oh
Bowie
my
is
God,
like
yes.
one of
Yeah.
the main
He's a
he's like one of the
shapeshifter?
main villains.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
So brilliant.
Love that. All right. What do we have to look forward to from NearDark Studios in the immediate future?
End of November, we should be getting ready to at least launch our episode 0 for campaign 2, which will be set in the homebrew world of Faramine, and it is going to be at least a 1.5 year campaign, but it's more likely going to be a 2-year campaign. So
Nice.
pretty long set, and we've actually got some amazing artists that are working on the artwork. We also have our emojis for our Chicago by Night getting done by one of our amazing community members, Jelly. She has been doing fantastic work, so we're going to have 4 new emojis coming out here shortly as well. And then also for individuals that have not caught up with Chicago, because I wanted to touch on this earlier, I just kind of skipped my mind. I do know that when you start a campaign and you do decide to stream it, life inevitably does happen, and there's a lot of times where people can't catch an episode or 2 or 3, and they come back, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, and they don't have any idea what's going on. in their 4 hours an episode, we are going to be doing a 20 episode recap being narrated by Beckett. So,
Whoa,
Awesome.
yes.
that's awesome.
Very cool.
And of course, the
That's cool.
tomed history of Alistair.
Yes, the tomed history of Alistair. That may be something we actually do have a few plans for a dinner with Alistair segment.
That's cool.
We do have more commercials in the work. Actually, we do need to refresh
That
quite
sounds
a few
super
of them.
cool.
Very cool. I'm gonna pass back over to viewer questions now. We did get one. How many different versions of your setup for streaming did you go through? Kind of got to where you are now, and are you happy with it, or are you going to be making more changes?
I would have to say we have gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different versions of the stream setup. What we're at right now is currently the best we've ever had it. However, I'm a perfectionist. I always want to improve. If there's any room for improvement, I always want to make it better. Yeah, this is definitely not the last stop. It's just the best stop we've gotten to so far.
Awesome. Very
Well,
cool.
it looks fantastic. I was telling you earlier that I am in love with the lighting. I'm in love with the setup, and you can definitely tell that it's a labor of love, making sure that things are set up in such a way. I mean, your blocking is fantastic. It's just great and good for you guys.
Thank you very much.
How challenging was it to really get the setup done with everyone in the same room? You see Critical Role, LA by Night, and they've got this really nice setup with everyone's in the same room, but then a lot of actual stream games are everyone's room.
Right. I think Critical Role is a good example. Towards the end of their show, when they do a kind of it's a B-roll shot, you can see where the camera kind of pans above the table. You can see all the equipment and some of the stage in the background. Gives you a scope of how insane their setup actually is to pull that off. And you got to realize that as an independent, than doing this on your own, you got a totally different game to work with. You got to be your own sound guy. You got to be your own camera guy. You got to be your own tech support. A real big thing with us, I brought this up earlier, is we really focus on trying to stay in character while we're doing our performance, and while we're playing our game. And so being in the chat is something that we try to avoid doing, but it's just nigh impossible to not be in the chat in case there was a technical difficulty that occurred.
Right. Night case in point.
Exactly. Right. If you were, not watching, or you were unaware, obviously if you saw everyone freeze, but if you were in a tabletop situation, you would never have even seen the monitor.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a question for you while people let some more questions roll in, and this is entirely personal, and 90% of our viewers will not care.
Okay.
You are very into fitness, as am I. How much do you deadlift?
How much do I deadlift? Let's see here. As of right now, since I just started my bulk again, I am at 405 for a 1 rep max.
Nice.
And hopefully I'm looking to get that weight up a little bit over the winter. So now that winter's here, I could feel free about putting on some extra pounds.
Yep. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. How many dots in strength can you even
Dots in
bro?
strength can you even
I want all the dots in strength.
Yeah, I think in this case, when you're talking about dots and strength, they're really more dots and swole.
Yeah, swole dots.
Yeah.
How many swole dots are there?
Yep.
Yeah, I stole that from Jada Jester.
You can fit so many soaring leaps in this bad boy.
How many nerds does that equate into a locker?
Uh-oh.
No, so okay, I do want to give it another opportunity before we give you an opportunity to give to kind of plug the stuff that you have going on, the projects that you have coming, the places where people can find you. Name your favorite stream. Don't say us because it's probably not it. What's your favorite stream right now?
My favorite stream right now. Oh, let's see here. And I don't want to name off like an obvious, like a big one, like I don't want to say like Critical Role. I don't want to say Geek and Sundry, like LA by Night, because those are amazing shows and they're fantastic, but there is a lot of other shows out there that really could use some more viewing. But I really do enjoy the I haven't watched their streams, but I've seen their YouTube channel, their YouTube videos. I believe they're called I think it's the Shadow of Silence. I think they're starting their season 2.
Roll for it.
Yes, roll for it. Thank you. I believe they
Sounds of
also
Silence
did
went into
a
Shadows. Yes.
They did also a Game of Thrones tabletop.
They do a fantastic job.
I really enjoy their role playing. I love how they stay in character. It's fantastic, and that's coming from someone who personally doesn't like webcam based streams, and that's just like a personal preference of mine. But they're able to captivate me, even though they're not all in the same room.
Nice.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job, and I also enjoy their show.
Jaded said, we recently learned Alistair's human name is Alphonse. Can we get a last name and year he was born?
Yes, last night it was revealed that his birth name was Alphonse. However, I'm not going to release the last name because it may be linked to a historical figure.
Nice try.
Or surprise in the future. Also, this was dropped in chat earlier, and correct me if I mispronounce any of these, but Barnaby Athalos Forthwith, Amber Knight of Dane Walt Gregory Cornwallis V.
Yes, that was the name of the individual. Yes, that is a very ridiculous long name.
That is full of pomp. Very nice. Awesome. All right. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you so much, Quinton, for joining us. Much appreciated. You have been a pleasure to speak with.
The pleasure is all mine.
Where can people find NearDark Studios online? Where can people find you online? And what do you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, right now we're just trying to do our big push to get to 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube. So it's NearDark Studios on YouTube. And we are we're pushing right now towards 500. We just 4 months ago, we were sitting at 32 subscribers, and now we are now pushing towards 500. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, definitely go drop a subscription. We greatly would appreciate it. We're currently on our road to 1,000. And if you want to watch us live, obviously we'll be at NearDark Studios at Twitch TV, and we stream every Monday. And so far, I don't think we've actually ever canceled a game of Vampire 4 months in a row. But
that is impressive.
Yeah, every Monday, and it's going to be 7 p.m. Central Time. So
fantastic.
Other than that, that's pretty much where you can find us. And I already said what we got planned coming up. So we got our 20 episode Beckett narration recap, and campaign 2 is our 2 primary upcoming things that we got going on for the channel.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, actually, you know what? There is one more thing. Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah.
We are doing a potential Gen Con event. Elijah has stated on the stream that he is looking into possibly reserving a room for the community to potentially host a vampire LARP for anyone that would like to show up and be involved with this. And then for our overseas community members, would be hosting a Roll20 as well for them.
Fantastic.
Awesome. That's
Very
great.
Cool. Well, I know that I will be excited to check that out. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. It's really
Yeah, pleasure
interesting
having
kind
you.
of seeing how you guys approach vampire, seeing kind of understanding what your insights are as far as Dungeons and Dragons are concerned, or Pathfinder. Kind of watching the growth of the channel is very exciting. We're obviously huge fans of you guys. I know a lot of community members are also fans of you guys. So thank you for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
100%. And
and for being an awesome part of the community.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
definitely. So for our viewers, upcoming, we do have some very exciting interviews coming up as well, including Elijah will be joining us in the near future. So definitely tune in for that one if you want to hear more about what's going on with NearDark Studios. We've got Stabber Studios up next week. We'll be talking with him about his approach to storytelling. Can I talk about one of the other ones? Is it too soon?
It depends. Is there one that's going to be on stream?
Yeah,
The one coming up very soon?
coming up maybe on the 24th.
Yeah, talk about that one.
All right. So on the 24th, we will have a special Sunday stream. We will be speaking with Matthew Dawkins.
Oh,
So definitely tune in for
The
that
Gentleman Gamer.
one. Absolutely.
That's going to be on the 24th, which is a Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yep.
Yeah,
2100 GMT.
Yep.
So definitely tune in for that one. That will be a very
We love that,
very
man.
lovely.
So
interesting-
there is going to be an opportunity to ask questions. It is on a Sunday, so come here. Make sure you watch the whole stream in order to ask a question. There's probably going to be a flood of you here, but hopefully it's going to be a really good conversation. He's a really cool guy, and we have a few more interviews coming after that that are just as exciting. So make sure you kind of subscribe, talk to everyone about us, the whole nine.
And not too soon to say, we will also be launching an audio podcast in the near future. Rick is frozen.
Yep.
Jeff Malkavian, his video is frozen down there with a nice grin
no.
on his face. But
Oh well.
I will say that before the end of the year, we will be launching an audio
It's the
podcast.
default look anyway.
Yeah, it is. That's pretty accurate for you. And that will be there will be some surprise audio only interviews on that podcast. So make sure you check it out. We'll have more details for you in the near future.
And of course, you can find us on Twitter at Gehenna Gaming, on Facebook at Gehenna
Games.
and you can find our website, www.gehennagaming.com. This December, we are going to be at PAX Unplugged. We're the only group that's going to be running V5. So if you want to play Vampire the Masquerade, make sure you go and attend and look for us. We'll be hanging out right next to the Chaosium guys. If you are not gaming, you can stop by the table and say hi and kind of bullshit, whatever. And I think that's all we have. What's our YouTube?
Gehenna Gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we did recently
You're
launch.
sure about that?
I had to think. We recently launched our YouTube channel where we are starting to post these episodes, so that you can catch them later on. We just posted our interview with Melee Damage over there. So make sure you check that out if you missed that stream last week, and stay tuned. I believe Marchosius is going to be streaming for us on Thursday.
Yes, I am going to be streaming for everybody on Thursday. So make sure you come when Marchosius takes over Twitch.
Because I might be going to see Tool or something, some band.
Yeah, just some band.
Some band named Tool. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I much appreciate it. And apparently, I have to go all Highlander on someone who stole my name. So,
Hey, it's Ian Watson from Onyx Path, and he's delightful.
yes. Well, there can be only one.
Sadly, yes.
Nope. Thank you so
Two
much.
Ians enter, one leaves.
I would rather Thunderdome it. Yes, that's fair.
All right. Thank you.
I'm just
Goodbye,
gonna end the
everybody.
stream. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Quinton. It was
Good
wonderful.
night.
You have a good night.